Hey guys, we're talking Power Rangers again, and this is actually the second video in a series of review videos where we review the Altaya Megazord. So I'm gonna link the first one, which is the Mastodon right here. And otherwise, the gist of it is that we're gonna be taking a look at the articulation of the Zord as well as the design, and then we're gonna compare that to the other one. So stick around and we're gonna get right into it. And here is our Pterodactyl, and as you can see, comparing it to my hand, it's gigantic. But more importantly, we're gonna compare it to our Lightning Collection Remastered Pink Ranger. And as you can see, they look really good together just like that. Now, otherwise, we are gonna be comparing it to some images that I have up on screen from the official data book. And as you can see, it actually looks pretty different from the official prop, or at least what I'm assuming is an official prop that they took images of. So this part right here that's really reflective, as you can see, is not reflective at all in the original. We have lines over here that have more detail in the original that are not detailed here. Looking at it from the backside, it actually has quite a bit of detail that looks pretty close, but like this white line right here is actually too thick. On the original, it's much thinner, but there's a lot of other parts that are looking pretty close, which is really cool to see. Now, the other thing to note too is that the legs that are on this are actually not something that we ever see in the show, at least as far as I can remember. But as far as I know, these things were really specific to the toy, and it's these are the cannons that you'll see on the back of the Megazord, and otherwise you don't see them anywhere else when the Zords are in individual mode, but the toy uses them to keep the Pterodactyl propped up. And speaking of toys, here are a lot of other Pterodactyls. So starting with our leftmost one, this is the original American release version. And then we have the Bandai Legacy Black and Gold. This is our Soul of Trugokin. We have our cheaper Hasbro, our newer Zap Hasbro, and then finally our mini plow version. So you can see how all of those compare. And it's interesting how differently sized they are, even though when formed in Megazord mode, they're pretty comparable in height. And you'll see more of that in a later review. Otherwise, for the most part, these are transforming the same way. They have a lot of the same design cues. One of the interesting things though is that the Zap one actually has an extra bit of articulation because it can do that, which is kind of surprising. I'm not sure what the point of that is, but it's kind of nice to have, just one bit of extra articulation. And that's something that our Altaya does not have. Not that I find that to be a deal breaker by any means, but it's just something to note. Now, like our Mastodon, our Altaya Pterodactyl appears to be basically an upscaled version of the Soul of Trugokin Pterodactyl. And as you can see, they look pretty much exactly the same, bit by bit. All the cues are there. I think maybe the cannons aren't as deep as the cannons on this one, but that's a really minor bit. And you can even see on the backside, it's the same. So that white part that I pointed out earlier is the same amount of thickness on our Soul of Trugokin version. So really, it's the same thing. And that's not a bad thing at all, but it's just interesting to note. And since we're looking at the back, I do want to point out that this right here is our micro USB for charging, because the head lights up. And getting the light right, you can see that there's a wire right here, and that wire continues all the way up to the head because the head lights up. And it might be kind of hard to see, but this little rectangle right here is actually the power button to turn on those LEDs. Now, what's interesting compared to the Mastodon is that with the Mastodon, I have to actually press and hold the button in order to activate the lights. But on this one, it's just a click on and then goes to blinking, and then one more for off. With the Mastodon, it doesn't allow me to cycle to the flashing one with the button. I have to use the remote. Now, unfortunately, this remote cannot actually control the Pterodactyl, and that might explain why the button acts the way it acts. And that's probably because they could not find a place to put the infrared sensor, which is how this works. So too bad, but that's how it goes. Now, what I'd like to do is actually weigh it. And for the sake of comparison, first we will weigh the original Pterodactyl, and this is 1.7 ounces. Our Soul of Trugokin is 1.8 ounces. And finally, our Altaya, you can see, is 1 pound, 1.5 ounces. So that's a big, hefty piece, tons of die cast. And as far as the die cast goes, the biggest pieces are the die cast parts themselves. So it's all of the red that you see is die cast. And then obviously this part is die cast as well. The head is actually plastic, the neck is plastic, the wings, the fins back here are all plastic as well. My only real gripe about this is that the cannons don't actually stay on as well as they do on all of the other toy versions. I don't think that's because I put it together wrong, but I'm gonna need to review the instructions to see if maybe I did something wrong. Now click over here for the next video in the series or for more Power Ranger stuff.